Fightcast. We're here at the legendary Triangle Jiu-Jitsu Toro / cage side fight shop. The blue mat's behind us, the location of every Toro Cup. Trevor used to work here
years ago at the OG. No, not at this location.
Oh, right,
at like one of the second and third incarnations of cage side before this.
You can say shed if that's what you're thinking.
No, so I met Boomer during the shed era.
Okay.
That's when I met him, and I worked for him at like the OG cage side spot when Triangle Jiu-Jitsu was a couple like puzzle mats on a wall and like 2 Dahmer mats.
That's where champions are made, though. Places like that.
Absolutely.
You also started the Cage Side Fightcast.
The cage side concussion cast.
Concussion cast, which is aptly named now more so than it was then.
And that became Dirty
White Belt Radio. Yeah, so
and
you've
then
been
Jeff, like we were behind the scenes on like the first like cage side concussion cast like carnival, and that's what turned into Toro Cup.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you've been like at a foundational level of a lot of.
I'm just that
kickboxer
kickboxer that people put up with. I was like, these guys
in
are
grappling, not even in
kickboxers.
MMA, but in grappling. History
I'm
here
the
in
most
North Carolina.
accredited white belt in the state.
You've got to be. You've got to be at this point. You've got to be. Our guest today is, of course, Bad Boy Medicine, MD, Instagram kind of phenom lately, and kind of just
I
exploded
know some viewers
onto
think
the
that he's
scene.
not real because he just looks too perfect.
Yeah,
some of you guys thought this
the
might be
resume
like
speaks for itself.
like
obviously,
it's all AI.
It's all just very intense smoke and mirrors on my side. I do the editing, so I don't put it out unless it looks like that.
yeah. You can catch Austin reeling our friend Xavier relentlessly on his Instagram.
My camera, for some reason, magically cuts off whenever he catches me.
Right. It's like a weird thing. You got to call customer support about this camera. But, yeah. So, Austin, I don't know how long you've been living in North Carolina or been training here out of Triangle Jiu-Jitsu, but I think it was, close to a year now that I first saw you, like, training here or posting clips here. So I didn't know if you wanted to tell a little bit about how you got started, not only training, judo, which is the thing you're most well known for, but how you started training here at Triangle Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I started about a year and a half, 2 years ago, after quite a long hiatus from the mats. I started judo when I was 15. Did it very seriously until I went to med school and residency, and I was off the mat for 6 years, so I didn't really practice at all. But I feel like when you grapple, that kind of never really leaves you, and that that kind of desire to get back and choke some people, or what have you. And so I got back, came here, and I got my butt kicked. Turns out the turtle that I was so reliant on in judo doesn't really work as well in jiu-jitsu. And been doing it here happily for the last 2 years, trying to hone the craft and focusing on that. And, yeah.
So you just ended up here after your residency placed you here. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Chapel Hill, actually.
Oh, okay. So not very far at all.
No,
right?
not very
So
far.
when you first got into judo, what was it that drew you into doing judo out of all the things you could have picked as a 15-year-old?
Bushido judo?
Bushido, yeah. No, they used to hold I used to go to their tournaments all the time.
Of course, Trevor knows.
So,
Trevor knows.
I started judo in high school when I was getting bored of wrestling, so I got into I got fucking thrown in judo, and I was like, yo, fuck wrestling. I was wrestling for Gary High, so they're very competitive, but I'm not very. But I was like, you can use the ground as a weapon? This is neat. And I started seeing other wrestlers at judo tournaments. I was like, what the fuck is happening here? Yeah. Bushido judo's been the only long-going judo tournament in the area.
Yeah, exactly. So I started there, and then I just thought it was cool. Just probably watching some highlights, and I was like, oh wow, that looks slick. I want to be able to do that. I wasn't a very likable kid, so I needed to know how to defend myself.
Real.
When you say a likable kid, do you mean you were just a nerd? You were into weird stuff?
Yeah, definitely.
People's pets went missing, and you were like,
not that type.
Okay.
Well, you grew up in the right generation because now the stock has risen on nerdy things to the point where it's perfectly acceptable to be nerdy about shit, especially if you're a badass black belt / champion in a martial art.
Yeah,
then you're
very dangerous in the wintertime coats and stuff.
Not so big of tropical climates, don't like that.
Yeah, but then I started to feel uneasy in the summer when I couldn't defend myself, not relying on the jacket. So I was like, okay, got to start jiu-jitsu now. So husband now, gonna be a father hopefully one day. So I have to defend my kids all season. So.
Yeah, you can't be relying on muggers wearing
No,
hoodies
it
and
was either
jackets
that
and
or
stuff.
move to Dagestan, but I hear those guys know how to grapple as well. So
Part of it's the altitude, I think, too. Like that mountainous environment, like probably makes the cardio pretty insane for wrestling as well.
I was in Colorado too for 5 years training. The Olympic Training Center is, and I just got back from there and I felt the altitude.
How far did you take things with judo before you were like, I have to put my real life first now?
I think so. I guess toward the end of my career in 2014 is when I retired. I won the last nationals I competed at, and I had won U.S. Open, the last one I competed at, and in 2014 I was on that sort of, I guess, like international scene. I got bronze at a World Cup, and I was making 66 kilos, so 145, and I was cutting a lot of weight, and it was a grind. Kind of made everything really hard if you don't really want it, especially in a sport like judo. It's not a lot of funding, and I mean, you're really not hoping to get paid. You're just hoping to get your trips and some living expenses covered.
Yeah. Hoping to break even is a lot of times the best you can hope for.
Yeah, I mean, even hoping to break without like
Spending
tens and tens of thousands in debt. My last tournament, I was in Abu Dhabi, and I was making 66, and then I think honestly, it was such a grind, and I was okay with that before. I think kind of really what was responsible is getting into medical school, because I felt like I didn't have that sort of like, I feel like everybody kind of likes something to make themselves feel special, right? Differentiate them, right? I feel like, and for me, it was judo for a really long time, and so I kind of was tougher, and I was like, okay, this is what defines me. This is what I guess gives myself like some worth and makes me a little special. And then when I got into medical school, and I kind of had, well, I could do this now, which seemed a lot easier, going to like sunny California, eating like In-N-Out burgers and
Avocado
stuff.
toast.
It was hard to keep that grind going at the level that I would have needed to make the Olympics, which was the ultimate goal. And so I feel like it was just a slow sort of decline, and I guess heart from, which I kind of hate to admit.
Your heart just wasn't in it. Like
Yeah,
it was.
it wasn't. I didn't have that same, I guess, necessity to get up and be hungry and go work out with killers, get beat up, get injured, worry about the future when I had, I guess, medical school. But then I don't necessarily think that was, it wasn't like there was a cost decision I made, because when I went and I was in the hospital, I kind of hoped that sort of void left without grappling would dissipate, but it never did, and I never really felt like, I guess it sounds kind of corny, but complete and so now I'm back.
Yeah, and back in a huge way. And I think that, like, we talked about, not being able to rely on the jacket. I think that's one of the things that I've come to appreciate the most about you and the content that you're providing, is that you often do things in a way where you're not only like no-gi minded, not traditionally judo minded, but you're starting to show how these things can lead to chokes. You're starting to show how these things can lead to meaningful positions in jiu-jitsu and MMA as well.
Yeah, I thought there was like a cool niche, and honestly, Justin Flores, J-Flow, he has like such a cool channel, and he was the first guy I saw really show like how cool judo was in a no-gi kind of scenario, and so I kind of wanted to do some of that as well, and it's more fun for me honestly than judo, because I feel like I've trained so much in judo, the learning curve is sort of plateaued a bit, and I'm just getting older. I'm really only just getting worse at judo, but learning how to apply it in the no-gi, it's just like problem solving, and I think it's still some unexplored territory that I get to try to figure out these puzzles and show people how cool judo is, because I feel like a long time people didn't really respect it in the no-gi world. You had a few sort of phenoms like a Cara Parisian we were talking about, and Rhonda.
I think that's what most people, casual people, think of when they think of judo and MMA, is they probably think of Rhonda before they think of anyone else.
But I always sort of still probably to some extent have a chip on my shoulder when it comes to like, no guys, like this is cool and badass, and it works well. And I think in there are pros and cons to each, like wrestling, judo for like the no-gi takedowns, like sort of landscape. But I think judo is, I mean, I'm biased of course, but I think it's still.
I think that's why Rhonda was very successful and popular early on. She wasn't Chris Cyborg or a female Mike Tyson, at that point. She couldn't have these crazy fights where she's knocking out girls in under a minute, but what she could do in under a minute was throw them on their fucking head, which a lot of people liked to see.
And immediately jump into that arm
It was
bar.
like the best thing that could have happened for women's MMA is because it showed that it can be a different kind of entertaining fight.
The one interesting thing about judo that like a lot of, and you might see this going to no-gi, is that it teaches you to catch and immediately attack a submission.
Yeah, exactly.
And like some people talk about like catch can wrestling, way less pin, way more like fuck your leg, fuck your arm.
Yeah.
Where judo, like the window is what, like 5 seconds?
Yeah,
or less.
You
than
have
that?
to be making progress immediately, so they can call it like a mate, a stop. So it kind of reminds it. If jiu-jitsu is 90% on the ground, 10% stand-up, judo's the
90%, 10% on the ground. Yeah.
But so you
It
really
also teaches a very dominant pinning position to translate to. Well, it's also like we're having fun. Why am I at the ceiling? And it's that immediate like down and control that is really different when you see like a very good hip toss happening in a fight. That person's like, hold up, can we not? And someone immediately has like side control. They go to mount or knee on belly, or they're catching an arm.
And that was, so when I first started jiu-jitsu, my goal was to sort of, I guess, I wanted to like beat and be able to beat like the best sort of jiu-jitsu practitioners I could, right? So trying to take what was already kind of ingrained into me from judo and what works, what doesn't. And in jiu-jitsu, I found, like when I started immediately, there's certain positions that if you do judo, you're very used to, that I could catch immediately, like good guys with one like this triangle, the sankaku from the front, because it's so common in judo, and so you get everyone knows how to defend it, and so you're hitting it against very high caliber sort of opponents in that position. So like immediately, I kind of think of it as I had a black belt level submission already with that one sankaku, and then the other one is what you alluded to with that transition from the mat to the ground where you have to catch things quickly. Yeah. So like a lot of on my Instagram, a lot of the submissions I get are in that sort of in-between space where I'll throw.
You control the gray area a little bit.
Yeah, and jiu-jitsu practitioners, it's more unorthodox for them because it's less sort of methodical and intellectual. It's just more of a, like, okay, this is an opening, this is ingrained into me that this is what I need to look for immediately, and I try to snag it. Yeah, but...
No, that's what I like about judo, man. When I see it, like that it creates that urgency.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. It's a striker's urgency for submissions instead of the whole like, come on top of me, bro.
Yeah,
like, I'm like, dude, fuck that.
Urgency is the perfect way to describe it. Yeah.
I was going to ask about like, when people see judo, a lot of times, especially if they're outside the world of judo, they look it up. They see like, old Japanese guys in gis or old Russian guys in gis. But it seems like
that's part of the
all the people I know who like actually have competed in judo, especially from a young age, it seems more like a young man's sport.
Totally. It's totally young.
My friend Kieran Shanahan, who trains at Elevate,
that guy's a beast.
He's a beast, obviously, but he won the Torah Cup Invitational with
35-year-old
with zero ACLs.
They're old as shit.
Yeah.
And like they have the body of a 65-year-old war vet.
Yeah,
like 30, and I'm like,
it seems like it's just hell on your knees and like
and
hell on
back,
your neck and neck.
There's so many, because you have these essentially like handles, right, in a gi, so you have more torque than you would in no gi, and so you can generate a lot more force, and it is like very technical, but I think that if you're not very strong, very fast, and like very athletic, there's a ceiling that
the level of technicality has to be so much higher than your opponents.
And that's one of the reasons I don't do it quite as much anymore, is because it is so hard on your body. And I found that for whatever reason in no-gi, there's something about it that feels like a bit safer without, I guess it kind of goes back to the torque in the knees, because you can just really like get someone's knee, use your hands to just like wrench them over it. And yeah, fortunately, I mean, I've had injuries and stuff in judo, but I probably would have a lot more had it not been for the 6-year hiatus off the mat I took.
Right, yeah, because you said you were taking it as you kind of were like physically at your peak of competition.
And with the
right?
weight cutting too, it just
Yeah,
leads to
and I
more
was gonna-
injury and less recovery.
As somebody who medically is aware, like I'm sure this was before you went to med school, but you probably were still interested at
Yeah.
that time. And Trevor, as a coach, you've been with a lot of athletes that have been cutting weight. What is it like to cut weight while flying around the world?
Yeah, the airports are tough because
I can only imagine.
you go to these and you're in these foreign places, and so
Cinnabon.
that little devil on your shoulder says, "Oh well, Austin, you've never been in Portugal and get a chance to try this pastry." And like that sounds like a great idea at a great point at the time, and it's also this like the stasis of like being on a plane, being in an airport, sitting around where
It's miserable when you're not cutting weight.
it is just hard to lose it. Like sometimes, like I would go check my weight, maybe I'd be like 6 pounds over, then I fly somewhere, and it takes, I don't know, like whatever, 16 hours. You get there, and you try, even if you're good in the airport, and then you're 10 pounds over, you got to go put on the trash bags and run. It sucks. I used to worry that it was kind of unhealthy when I was doing it, and I've sort of actually, like getting more familiar with medicine, feel like that's actually not the case anymore. I don't think it is unhealthy. I don't think like
Unhealthier than cutting weight.
I don't think it's that unhealthy long term.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on
Well,
cutting
are
weight
you?
for sure.
But I guess it's more in the range of what you're cutting. Like me, I tell people like you shouldn't cut more if you're getting into a fight.
Oh, yeah,
You
yeah,
should
so
not do more than like
we have to-
5 pounds. Like after that, you might, especially like a day of weigh-in. Like
Yeah.
I hear people saying they want to cut 20 pounds. I'm like, you're just insecure.
Yeah.
Like, relax.
I think it's just sort of kind of got to define like what.
Wrestlers cut weight. They're also not getting hit in the head. Like
Exactly.
it's a different story. Like you'll see that with like grappling, where it's like I can cut 10 or 12 pounds. At least I'm not getting punched. And
Right,
you'll see
yeah.
more guys be
do
okay
you
with
make do you make weight and then compete the next day, or you make weight same day?
So when I last competed, you made weight the day before, but then there was a 30%, I think, likelihood that the next day you could. They would check your weight again, and you couldn't be more than a certain percentage, maybe 5 or something percent above the weight. So you kind of had to keep it down. Yeah, there's a good point with the striking. Less so, I guess, talking about that, and more just assuming you weren't taking impacts to the head, is kind of these intense episodes of dehydration and kind of caloric depletion. Does that have long-term consequences, assuming that you don't go into renal failure? I think some people do, but assuming that does not happen, I don't think it's actually bad. But again, striking
As long
is
as
a
they
different story.
properly rehydrate.
Yeah, and
you're talking
And,
about
like you have to
long-term.
prepare your. I tell people, don't look at that number. Like, don't think about cutting weight until you've trained for like a year and a half, because proper preparation, proper diet, gets your body prepared for that potential weight cut. Like, so many people will just try to cut weight and they're doing half the right thing, and they think that weight cut will make up for it. Where if you are always training, always dieting, like always doing the right thing, that discipline of like, I cannot fuck off with this. Like your body will cut weight easier and easier.
Yeah, more easily. Yeah.
Speaking of head damage, easier. No, it does. It conditions your body to recover differently.
Yeah, and that's something actually, if I could go back and do it again, I would have done differently. Is because actually after when I stopped judo, retired, whatever you want to call it, I
Found yourself.
found myself. Yeah, exactly. I started getting doing like intermittent fasting, and so since 2014, I tell people before it was cool, I was doing it. So I only eat once a day, and that sort of typically, like when that happens, you kind of flip in and out of ketosis, and so your body, like you said, it takes some time to sort of.
It's like a fasted state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it feels really
constant.
bad at first because you need to sort of upregulate this cellular machinery necessary to function and metabolize, ketones and stuff in that way. But when you cut weight, you're entering.
How much do you sleep? Do you sleep a lot?
So I'm a bad sleeper because I'm very
Really?
high strung and anxious.
Interesting. Okay.
7 hours, try 6-7 hours. But if I had to go back, and I would have, when I was training, adhered to the same sort of fasting, lifestyle, because when you start to cut, you were doing that anyway. So if you're conditioned to do that, and your body is already in a state where it's used to just that sort of kind of method of metabolism, then you're more well equipped to deal with it once you're there.
Yeah.
But
Science is cool, kids.
it is cool.
So we were talking about Rhonda and Kayla and these people who have done the Olympics and then transitioned into MMA. Is there a particular, you were talking about how you value certain things over, like when you were talking about what you disliked about Rhonda's game before we started recording.
Yeah.
Is there a certain system of judo or a certain modality overall that you think more people should just be generally applying this to their no-gi game, MMA game?
First of all, thank you for putting me on blast like that. I'm just kidding. So I think what I with Rhonda, she would gravitate a lot to when she would do her hip throws or leg throws. Like she had really nice harai and koshi-guruma, these sort of head and arm throws. I find in jiu-jitsu that is risky because if it doesn't work, your arm is in a position where you give somebody a seat belt essentially. So if it doesn't, even if it does work and they roll, you're in a terrible position. Kara Parisian, I think, does no-gi judo the best. If we're not talking about all the Dagestani boys that have this kind of hybrid grappling style where he would, rather than using the head and arm, focus on the whizzer a lot, which I love, and I do a lot of that.
Well, you would always catch it off the wall, where
Oh, yeah,
Dagestani
with
guys
the
will
cage.
catch it, they'll wrestling intent to the wall, and then they start fighting for the underhooks, or they start fighting for wrist control, where Kara was that's too much work.
And
He'll just he would always find a way to get the underhook and step in the middle of the cage.
Exactly.
Which was always a little bit more unique.
That clinch work,
And the whizzer is nicer because it's kind of
like a failed takedown attempt.
It's kind of like a reverse of a traditional over-under, right? Where you have, if you're dominant, you're throwing this way, you have underhook versus a whizzer. Because if the guy knows you're going to lock up with them and knows that's what you want, it's hard, I find, to get a meaningful underhook that can generate enough torque to throw because your shoulder just gets cut behind you. Here, I'll show you.
That's the beauty of having the mats here,
if
too.
you're trying to throw like this, if you're a good wrestler, have a good clinch, and you're clamping down on this, my shoulder's just going to get cut behind me. And it doesn't really do much, but with a whizzer, it's easier to get. People are more likely to give it to you, and then you're able to kind of keep your shoulder in front of you more. And Kara did that really well. And Kayla, what I really like about her is she has so much time on the mat in a right-handed judo stance, which is a southpaw and striking, right, with your right foot forward. So she's going to be her most athletic here, and she's used to gripping here. So when I think she's right-handed, yet she stands in a southpaw stance. So smart, because all of her judo throws come with this right foot forward, and that's going to be her most dangerous, sort of aspect of her arsenal, right? And so I think a lot of people kind of get used to striking one way, grappling one way, but she understood, or coaches or whatever, that no, I'm most athletic, most dangerous here. I can get enough striking on a southpaw striking stance, but still implement most of my game, which is
and it's good for her because southpaw is a very low volume. It's considered a low volume stance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I didn't even know that, but yeah.
Usually, because southpaw is all about fighting to the outside angle, utilizing that right-handed jab more, setting up your power side cross or kick, and always fighting outside that foot. And I tell people it's a way. If you know how to fight southpaw, it's a very simple thing to work with. It's just consistency. You can get less with more strikes.
More counter fighters are also southpaw by nature as well.
Yeah.
And in judo, that's so ingrained. It almost gives me anxiety to grapple with my left foot forward. It feels completely different. I don't feel like I have. I'm probably 30% of the grappler I would be with my right foot forward. That's just ingrained into you.
You're going to throw off so many guys like that. I'm sure you've experienced that already doing the amount of jiu-jitsu and even sambo that you have. But
it's very sidedness.
Yeah.
And in judo, left versus right versus right, it feels, it's like a completely different sport almost. Honestly, right gi versus right no gi kind of in some ways feels more similar to me than right judo versus left judo. It's such a huge difference, and so she gets to capitalize on that and doesn't have to go back to the drawing board completely, switching your stance.
What for you has been the biggest challenge transitioning, the things that you've learned, or as far as just learning jiu-jitsu in general, what's been the most challenging thing
Oh
for you
man,
personally?
so it's been a whole, I guess, progression. Immediately, I was getting leg locked, like heel hooked, ankle locked, knee barred, like every roll, like because we don't have those in judo, and so, but I wasn't getting caught with arm bars and
stuff you knew about already.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so in judo, my biggest mistake immediately was when somebody tries to like hit a sumi gaishi or a tomoe nagi, you base down, put your hips out, because your first priority is not getting into position where you're at risk for scoring and getting elevated. So when guys would do that, I would pressure up, but that just provides a perfect access to my knees and ankles. And so I had to sort of be cautious about ensuring that I wouldn't get elevated, but I also wouldn't give them my leg. And then the next thing, which was just the turtle that we're so reliant on judo, that in jiu-jitsu it's just a matter of time before you're losing. And especially I couldn't just wait for the mate, which is a strategy in judo, tighten up, wait 20 seconds
and wait for the pause.
Yeah, but if you can't wait 5 minutes, especially I find a no-gi, and so I had to get used to escaping when I couldn't just wait for a stop. Those are like the two biggest things.
Have you ever watched any Neil Mandelson videos?
Mm-mm.
He's so good at turtle play.
Oh,
like,
really?
I would recommend his turtle instructional to everyone, but
Is that the
especially
big heavyweight guy, the grappling coach for MMA?
Yeah,
Okay.
and he's famous for like doing the kneel knot and stuff. He was Chuck Liddell's grappling coach forever. And
He was a Bowser joke somewhere in there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's been out in like California, he's in like Boca Raton. Like, yeah, he's been around.
Yeah,
that's
great.
So you're sort of conditioned to become just comfortable with turtle and having a good turtle, but that complacency you get is, I had to change that really quickly in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like, that's the position in jiu-jitsu where I feel like you need to have urgency.
Yeah, exactly.
You need to have that judo urgency in that
Yes.
position,
Yeah.
especially when you're the guy who's being attacked in turtle. Because so much of that top guy's game in turtle is like almost reactionary. Like, I'm going to maybe grab like inside wrist control, but then depending on what they do is usually going to set the tone of what I do.
Yeah.
And I find that the faster you can get to something that you're familiar with, the easier of a time you have getting out of turtle into better positions.
And that's another thing, when what throws, like, is the juice worth the squeeze?
Yeah.
Like, for example, like Seanagi shoulder throws and just not worth it in no-gi.
Well, do you have a good Peterson roll?
No.
I feel like that's the thing that that would be awesome for a judo guy to have, because Robert Ellison, this black belt at Elevate, he is obsessed with calling certain sweeps like judo throws on the ground.
Yeah,
certain
totally.
like you retain the shoulder sweeps.
Yeah.
You're taking somebody over the top, elevating them. It's.
Certain positions too are like judo fights on there, like the dog fight position where seatbelt versus wizard. That feels just very similar to doing it standing, but with like seos, like drops especially, like they might work, but even if it does, you're at risk for, you have your back, you're now exposing, and if you could choose to do throw that was didn't sort of render you susceptible to submissions, why not do? That's why, even compared to wrestling, like I almost never shoot because you're kind of head forward, giving them the most vulnerable part of your body with your head and neck, right? And it's also very energy intensive. With a lot of the judo throws, you initiate them with your legs, right, with these kind of intertwining positions, and if it fails, like, sure, you could say that you're at risk of being countered, but you're not giving them a part of your body that could end the match immediately. And I think that's
one thing I really enjoyed about taking your foot sweep seminar. I was
thanks.
just like, this is a way lower commitment risk factor than like shooting a double or a single leg on somebody, especially in a jiu-jitsu or MMA context where everybody's first thing they learn is like, oh, somebody shoots this double leg or single on you, sprawl.
And guys are so adept and have so much familiarity in that position where they immediately front headlock, guillotine.
Especially Xavier, he's got a great guillotine.
Oh yeah, he's got me with it. Yeah, I remember he head and armed me for some. It was after I had shot, and I was like, oh man, I'm not doing this again. Guys are just so familiar. Kind of back to that like triangle example where you're fighting a battle where they're going to be very, very just adept and familiar. Where I would rather not fight that battle, not give them my head and neck. And judo still, it's unorthodox, and guys, a lot of good wrestlers out there, more good wrestlers in jiu-jitsu than good judoka. And so everybody at the gym they train at, there's 9 times out of 10 a good wrestler. So they have that training with good double leg defense, good single leg defense, but not all gyms have a good judoka. And so when I fight wrestlers, like I'm immediately like, no way I'm shooting.
Well, that kind of brings me to an interesting question that I've been wanting to ask you for a while. Is like, and I was kind of saving it for the podcast. Is it's just like, I feel like there's a pipeline of like, obviously you have the school to college to Olympic pipeline for wrestling, and to an extent for judo and other sports as well. But there's also almost like a gutter beneath that pipeline that catches wrestlers, and it's called jiu-jitsu and MMA gyms.
Yeah,
like if you trickle down from that system, you get caught in this system.
Yeah,
so there's
I'm in
almost
that
like
system now.
there's almost like a pipeline of guys that like, we have them in our gym too. Guys that like, oh, wrestling's over for me now. What do I do?
Especially in the U.S.
And so I think a lot of people, and this goes for myself included too, before I met people like you that are actually bringing judo into this style of martial art, was it's like, I feel like judo has transitioned to being more held in the regard of like a traditional martial art.
Yeah.
And MMA and wrestling are still considered like young person edgy things to do.
Yeah.
Early 2000s Monster Energy drink style shit.
Yeah.
And I don't think people think about judo in that way. So like, where do you feel, as someone who's been doing it for so long, like where judo is in the hierarchy of martial arts in the world, how it's represented in the mainstream media, etc.?
So we're sort of here skewed, just being in such a strong wrestling country. I mean, the number 4, 5, 8 guy in the U.S. on the right day, that guy can win the Olympics if he was given a shot, right? The guy who just didn't quite make it is going to be such an elite grappler. Not the case for judo in the U.S. Even the best guys in the country could. I mean, there's no male has ever won Olympics for judo from the U.S. ever.
Yeah, I remember hearing that.
But internationally, it is like the number. This would sort of be flipped in like France or Japan, obviously Korea. And there's so many, Asia especially, like judo is much more popular, and that's definitely by far most of the world. And so if you just had to do it sort of by pure numbers, it wouldn't be as it is in the U.S.
Do you feel like it's like any country that doesn't have like an insanely touted wrestling program is probably going to have judo in the mix there?
It's very region specific. Mm-hmm. So in certain countries, it's just so ingrained. Both are amazing. So like Eastern Europe, like Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Russia, all those guys. I mean, the majority of them who are like on the Olympic team for either or have done the other very, very seriously, and it shows in their style. Like a lot of the Eastern European sort of takedowns are based from like shooting with a hand on, defending shots with a whizzer, like Uchimata in judo, whereas in the U.S. it's often, not always the case, but shooting from space, like Jordan Burroughs, right? Like just like level change go, and not reliant on this sort of tie-up position. But I think in the U.S. it's a little bit skewed, but I think in terms of caliber of grappler, the best wrestler in the world and the best judoka they're going to be the same level of grappler, both studs. And even, honestly, I think probably, if I were to be controversial and piss off all the wrestlers, I think judo would actually be better just because there are more people that do it. And in the U.S., not the case, but if we were to take everybody in the world.
Do you think that's maybe part of the reason why it's been hard for us to medal, is because it's that caliber of athlete that has just been drawn into that sport?
And we don't have that versus we do in wrestling. Our best guys are best caliber athletes.
Yeah. That's what I was saying about
in-game financially for people that want to teach it, just like wrestling. Like, it's tough to make a living as a wrestling coach. Yeah. And judo, I've been told, like, if you're a black belt in judo, you're not supposed to get paid. You're supposed to just teach.
But
America's kind of like,
fuck that.
One of you guys should Google Teddy Reiner net worth and see. Like, you should do it. Like
who's this Teddy Reiner?
Yeah, you'll see. So he's this guy from France. and kind of going, like I mentioned, France is very strong judo, less strong wrestling, but a lot of these judoka in other countries, they're, I think, sort of social status-wise, they're held in high regard, which is enough to drive a lot of people,
It's
and then
not
financially
secure at
more.
all.
Known as
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Big Ted. Let's see. $245 million. The judo empire.
The world's
Exactly.
most
The French judo
like,
empire.
The world's richest grappler.
Yeah, I mean,
Jesus
he is a
Christ.
bit of an anomaly. but
Most
there are
crowned
lots
French
of-
judoka of all time, and is one of the invincible judo stars.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's a different world, just like anything. Food, it's just so culturally dependent. I think a lot of people, when they grow up in the U.S., don't realize that man, these guys.
5 gold medals at the European Championship. That's pretty
And then
impressive.
it's
I mean, I just think that, like, I was making the same point when we were talking about Francis not too long ago. I was like, dude, Francis would have been born in America. He would have never seen the inside of a cage. He would have been in the NFL or
NBA.
maybe in the NBA,
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that kind
and
of guy.
and that is like Teddy.
Yeah.
Like he's that guy
Yeah.
that was born into
France.
a country with a strong like judo
like,
backing.
you know what? Savate sucks. I'm
Yeah,
doing judo.
like places like France, like we like art, so we like martial. Like in Americans,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
football, basketball, you bunch of pussies.
The
and
only-
then, like,
the only-
here it's like.
The only downside is you're living in France, and so just
I mean, I keep looking. I'm like, you know what, dude? Maybe one day I'll put up with it. It looks kind of nice, but.
You just
But
keep eating
other
good.
cultures really seem to appreciate combat sports.
Yeah.
And
I always-
like
yeah.
a lot of people, like America still sees martial arts as martial arts instead of what it really is like combat sports.
Yeah, that
Like,
used to.
there's-
I used to hate that growing up. That was like another big chip on my shoulders. People would say, "Oh, what do you do?" I'd say, "Oh, judo," and they're like, "Oh, cool." Like my 8-year-old like son. who's-
How's your
Wanted
karate
Taekwondo.
going?
Yeah, exactly. It's a black
Yeah.
belt too. Like so it would always confuse, and I hated that, and I would always try to, if I was like with a girl that I thought was cute or whatever, and I would never try to bring it up because I was so worried about them confusing the two. Kind of like back to what you were saying, I wanted that grit, and I knew that judo, how it is when it's done right, is that like tough sport, but it's just that sort of confusion.
What do people think of when they hear the word judo?
I mean, now jiu-jitsu's really helped with that because jiu-jitsu's really elevated the sort of social status of martial arts.
I
and
agree.
People don't confuse it as much with like taekwondo, karate. Like I'm sure there's some studs out there in that, but not. It's so different when you're actually.
Unless you're my uncle at Thanksgiving, you never confuse jujitsu with karate.
yeah, but
Yeah, I was gonna ask, what do you think about the judo belt system versus jujitsu?
I mean I hate belts in general because
Yeah.
I think that's why when
Most people who do anything else other than jujitsu all have that answer, whether it's Shotokan karate or.
I feel like in jiu-jitsu people love belts.
It takes 10 fucking years to get a black belt. Yeah, I understand. It's like having a MD in many ways,
Yeah, and the only problem like I had with that is like there's so many now like studs like this guy who trains here, Nigel.
We were just talking about Nigel before the
like
podcast.
wrestled, led NC State in pins, scored on Kyle Dick. Like so he comes in with a white belt, and I mean he could catch black belts. And like when I was starting, I was catching black belts.
Just
day
a squeeze,
one.
just
Yeah.
like the level of squeeze he could squeeze out some black belt. Yeah, I've seen it.
Like I remember, like first day, like I would get caught obviously, but I would catch black belts if I got them in my like certain black belt positions, and it's always like weird, like oh wait, you're a black belt, like you're not you're a white belt, blah blah blah. It's just I kind of like in wrestling how there are no belts and people.
It's all Sambo's the same way.
It's based on like accolades.
So is Sambo.
Yeah.
Sambo's the same way. You can't even be credited as a Sambo coach unless you've won 2 competitions
I like
yourself.
Yeah. And I think part of me still I resist that, like what I grew up in with like the karate, black belt, all that stuff, and so I never really got into and plus in judo it doesn't really mean anything because you get promoted like so quickly. So there's
It's
so
like
many
2 years on average to get a black belt or something like that.
maybe a
Like
little
5 usually.
Yeah, maybe like 5. But there's so many black belts rocking around who suck. Who would get like any athletic wrestler white belt.
who just showed up.
Like
the
if
mat.
Nigel showed up, like they're Nigel's destroying them. And so in judo it doesn't really mean anything if you say you have a black belt. And so people don't take it as seriously in jiu-jitsu. But jiu-jitsu has done a really good job, I think, of preserving what it means to be a black belt. Like I've never rolled with anybody who is like a brown or black belt in jiu-jitsu that I haven't felt, wow, like okay, you're good. you know, whereas that's not the case in judo. Like, I'm sure you guys have probably even gone with some people that are black belts and in judo,
be a black belt.
and you're like you're not that good.
No, and I don't like to get near these black belts.
You
Them they're black belts.
You got a little too
dangerous
close to Austin. I
people.
almost got fucking shoulder thrown on.
Yeah. I was like, yo, man, why are you touching the striking coach? We don't like, I stopped grappling for a fucking reason. No. But I even remember in high school, like I started wrestling at 9, wrestled up into high school. Yeah. And when I got into judo, they were just like, what?
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know.
You're probably throwing black belts.
Well, because you could still shoot, you could do fireman's carries then.
Yeah,
you could shoot blast doubles back then.
Yeah.
And I'd go to a tournament that was like, just be an asshole. And I was like, okay. And it was around the time they took out like fireman's carries and blast doubles because of these guys that were coming in with like a wrestling background.
I think
like
that may
even
be
like
part
1
of
or
the
2 years of
reason-
wrestling going into like judo. Even like jiu-jitsu is still a huge like one.
That may be part of the reason why it's kind of ascended. I'll say nicely, ascended into the realm of judo being a traditional martial art is because traditional martial arts they belt very quickly and they belt more based on
and it's not like there's no mandate to actually go for real, right? Like you can just kind of practice on the air and stuff.
I think that's part of like a cultural thing here in America. Like, you know, in America especially, jiu-jitsu has such an innate tie with MMA, and this idea of like, well, we train jiu-jitsu because we know it will work in a real
Gracie
fight.
made it cool. Like,
he showed that it works in a real fight, and it still continues to work at the highest level to this day. So I think that there's like a constant reinforcement of realism that goes on in jiu-jitsu.
And I can't tell you how many times like I've encountered people who've gone with black belts in judo who are just not that good, but I've never had their hands on somebody who's like okay, this guy's good at judo, and it's like a big culture shock, and it happens a lot less so I think now than it probably used to. But I mean, the guys in judo who are good, like they're just like they'll fuck you up, you know what I mean? And if you've I'm sure you've encountered people like when you started judo where you're like, oh, you guys suck. Like
you guys
like,
just use
black belts.
Yeah, like I remember I would beat up the instructor's son a bunch. Yeah, and then I'd hear him yell at him in a different language, and I was like, well, did I just make this family worse? Like
exactly. Like there's a lot of that, and that's kind of why I don't.
But then as
like
soon as the instructor touched me, I was like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, and there's always like the same thing with probably in other countries with wrestling. If it doesn't have a strong wrestling program where you get your hands on like I don't know like a regional champ or whatever, and you're good at jiu-jitsu or judo or whatever, you're like, oh, wrestling, and you get your hands on somebody who's like this is a good wrestler. It's like, oh my god, like
it's a different world at that point. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
interesting. Yeah, I've encountered like maybe 3 guys total that ever came into the gym that were like, oh, you gotta watch out for that guy. He's a judo guy. Yeah. Like you gotta know exactly what you're getting into because I remember the first time I went with. There was a guy named when I first started training. I would come here a lot on Thursdays for Detroit's class because my girlfriend was training here at the time, and there was a Brazilian cat named Rodrigo that trained here, and he was a black.
He's
belt.
already gonna be good. His name is Rodrigo. He's a black belt probably.
He's a black belt from Brazil. Yeah. He's a white belt in jiu-jitsu.
That guy probably fucked me up.
They put the fucking little gloves on me, and they put the little gloves on him, and we were supposed to just shoot some takedowns in the cage. Nobody told me shit about this guy being a black belt in judo. As soon as we fucking tie up in the middle, he my feet almost touched the fucking ceiling. It was so crazy. And same thing happened when I went, and that was a no-gi. And then, I went with Kieran for the first time in a gi, not knowing who Kieran was. Right. And Kieran fucking threw me on my head too. Like it was like I was being teleported to the mat.
And especially in gi too. Like the gi, I feel like is such a. I mean, offensively, yes, it helps with throws, certain throws especially. But it's more. I kind of view it as a defensive tool. There's like that. The video on my Instagram of the Sambo match I put up.
I was gonna. How did you enjoy competing in Sambo? So, you used a primarily judo approach to your.
Yeah, exactly. Like, the guy I was.
It's like judo with a better breeze.
Yeah, exactly.
You have the luxury of not going up against a Sambo guy.
And and I feel like now with the rules in judo, like the gis are so big, it looks ridiculous. I don't even actually think it helps. Like increases the likelihood of a pawn if you have. It just looks stupid having gis that big. So I like Samba how you can wear the cool looking gis. I like
Samba does have the coolest looking fucking gi
legit Mortal Kombat gis.
They
have like the
with
shoulder
the Vegeta shoulders.
Yeah, exactly. and I like that you can grab the leg like you used to be able to in judo. That sucks. I don't know why they got rid of that.
It was so
makes it
interesting
less
though.
complete of an
It
art,
made
yeah.
it really cool to be able to attack someone's pant leg like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. And
it's a very practical thing.
You know how
Yeah,
the story of how like the heel hook, the knee bar, and the triangle were all invented by the same guy? Well, yeah. So in Japanese jiu-jitsu, there were these two like prefecture academies that would go against each other every year in a tournament, and this one school just won over and over again every year with mostly heel hooks, but they were also injuring people. So they banned heel hooks, and then that guy who invented the heel hook or was known for making it popular with their school, he back-to-back invented the triangle and then the knee bar, and then won the next tournament with the knee bar since it was legal, and then they made that illegal too. So that the whole like leg attacks not being on the table is such an old school.
I don't know.
Can you still attack like the waistline and the belt?
Yeah,
That's
you
still
can't.
allowed,
You can. Yeah, you can do that, but you can't. So the difference between like Greco and judo, not taking into account the gi, is in judo you can attack the legs with your legs. So I can go like this, whereas in Greco I couldn't do that unless I was planted. But you used to be able to do everything, and it also looks cooler. Like if you go watch, like if you YouTube judo pickup highlight, like it just looks so cool. I don't know why they got rid of it. But kind of the same with the defensive tool in that Sambo tournament. If you fight a good wrestler and you don't have a lot of experience with gripping, that's what really in judo I think is special. It's the gripping. You can completely shut somebody down. Especially like the American style, where there are so many wrestlers.
You were giving him a very hard time with your feet.
It was all grips, and I knew he was a good wrestler. I saw him fight, and he wrestled in college in Wisconsin. Tim, shout out. He's a really cool, nice guy, and a stud. But I didn't want to be playing. So I went into this tournament thinking like, I'm going to get some cool pickups. I saw he was like a much better wrestler than me, and I was like, okay. I immediately reverted to my
game.
Pansy judo. So I was like, I'm just gonna shut him down, like put him in a straitjacket. And so immediately, I wasn't gonna let him take shots from space. I'm just zeroing on those lapels here, and I'm never gonna dilly dally here. I'm always gonna be preventing that shot, because I mean, how can you shoot on somebody if you're not familiar with the gi if they
have inside position?
Yeah, it's like wrestling, like hands, like head, hip. I forget what they say, but you're always at hands in judo, and so that, and there are a lot of comments there, but like, oh, you couldn't do this to like blah blah blah. But I mean, if they didn't have, they don't have a lot of it.
You wouldn't be able to do this to Jordan Burroughs.
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
no shit, dumbass.
I mean, like I'm probably wrong about this, but I think if Jordan Burroughs like did not have any experience in a gi, never done jujitsu, never done jujitsu, never done any gi fighting of any kind. Yeah, I like my chances because it's just a completely different.
Oh, it's such a
sport.
different
it's
thing.
It's like boxing, like in MMA. Like if you're on the ground striking from there, it's a completely different sport, right? Even though you've been punching, so in judo, in a gi versus wrestling, yeah, it's still grappling, but you have a gi on and it changes things dramatically.
That's so awesome.
But I'm probably wrong about that.
Well, I mean, dude, I think
I gotta believe in myself, though, you know.
I think that will make a very good clip for your Instagram later. You know, it's,
yeah. Shout out JB. All I see is gold. All you see is silver. If you fight.
So when you started to like kind of explode with your content, was there any particular thing you started doing to start reaching more people? Or I think a lot of people around here, they would love to be able to teach jiu-jitsu or have jiu-jitsu instructionals or moves or whatever go as like viral or as reach as many people as your clips do. I was just wondering if there was any particular strategy you took on when it came to like trying to make your Instagram more popular. It doesn't hurt, but I'm just saying there are a lot of good instructors in North Carolina, like especially in Raleigh. There's a lot of good instructors who I think are good at teaching jiu-jitsu, but not good at filming instructionals.
Yeah, I think I had a few advantages. Like the first, honestly, one being having a very strategy one, find a very understanding wife who can support you financially for a while. Sugar mama, that's number one.
Doesn't help that you're a doctor. I mean, you gotta be making some money too. You know?
I do like temping and moonlighting, but not on a like a.
You're not practicing right now.
No, I am. I'm still licensed and everything, but
okay.
I only do enough to sort of like cover my expenses from doing what I'm trying to pursue right now, which is this.
Which is this? Yeah.
I think I had the luxury of judo. I think is inherently looks very cool, and it's catchy and flashy, right? Like.
And a lot of people, you can be very educated on grappling and still not know what you're looking at with judo.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like a world of mystery.
And I think that's why jiu-jitsu, like, I don't think it's going to be an Olympic sport anytime soon, just because, especially like the guard stuff, like if you're on your back, like it's just, like I like grappling and I have a hard time watching that if it's just a guy in closed guard the entire time. Judo, I mean, if you get some like kids off the street who don't know anything about grappling, you show them a throw and they're like, oh damn, like that looks sick. But if you show them like a guard, like
daily
back
Eva,
take,
they're like, nah, I'm good, bro.
Yeah, exactly. Or especially like, oh, do you see how he set up that like he took the back from guard and it took like 5 minutes? Like that is cool, but it's not cool to the average spectator. And then I mean, it was a big learning curve for me, and I'm still learning and not as good as I want to be with like all the editing and stuff. But I think, I mean, I was really lucky here at TJJ to have like this community of people. Like, honestly, I think about this all the time. The fact that I am allowed to sort of, and people are okay with filming my live goes, because I think if 10 years ago, I probably would have not been okay with it going live with somebody. I might end up on like an Instagram
I think
channel.
there's a lot of gyms that it wouldn't be cool, you know, but I think that this is the kind of place where people are kind of encouraged to do their own thing. You know,
Yeah.
Brandon's especially pretty big on that.
So cool. Yeah.
You know, very much very cool about people coming in and like training, dropping in and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised at all that they're very supportive of you as well.
And just like not being afraid, and I still am, and was a lot more so in the past, to put something out there. I mean, because I'm like self-conscious about every video I put out. Like I think I don't look as good as I could, and I worry that, oh well, so and so is better than me at this. Like I feel embarrassed knowing that they might see this, but I just tried to beat that out of myself. It's like, yeah, like Alonzo has a better drop Sode than I do, but like I'm gonna put it out anyways, and then looking to see what kind of caught on and what didn't, and try to gravitate towards that. For me, that was like a big shift to the no-gi stuff that tended to do better in terms of views and stuff, and I think in part that's because it's a real, I think it's a specific niche, like my channel, I don't think there are a lot of other ones that show judo, no-gi, in like a live example. Like 99% of my videos are live examples of rolls with no-gi. And I think like Justin Flores, J-Flow, like I think really pioneered the no-gi judo, but more focuses on showing technique. And he's got incredible technique and it looks awesome. But I'm still, I guess, at the age where I can go live with these studs for knock on wood, and so that's really what I was trying to like. I was like, okay, this is a niche I have. I'm gonna just exploit that.
Yeah, I like the way you kind of break things down. I saw your latest video where you're kind of like highlighting parts of the body and adding in some cool stuff. So it's like every time you put a clip out, it's like there's something new and improved.
Oh yeah. I'm just trying to like kind of get better with each one. And Instagram's nice because with YouTube, you're not putting out the videos at the same like the same quantity of videos, and so the quality could be better. But I was trying to just put for a while, like, and I still do this sometimes every day and at least like every few days, and so I have to get something out. So I have to get over, I don't like the way I look in this. Like, it
gotta film a lot of rolls.
Yeah, like I don't like the way this technique goes. I mean, it can even be something like so like vain, like, oh, I look ugly here, or like, oh, like this, I don't know, whatever. Like just getting over that, like it sort of forces me to get something out, because everybody is like self-conscious about everything, and if you know we're all kind of in it together, it makes it not so bad.
Yeah, that's a very inspiring message. Just upload the video, guys.
Yeah, just do it. Like, fuck it. Like, what's the worst that could happen?
Upload the video.
Like
You'll
someone
get better at it every
like you.
time.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and I see people all the time who are like just starting out in their journey with either like filming or grappling, and they put stuff out. And I mean, that's another thing. Like, I pay particularly close attention to those, because no one else is paying attention to them. So if you can pick up something from somebody not doing it in a traditional way, that you're like, oh, I like that. I can't tell you how many times I've done that and seen like white belts or something do something, and I'm like, oh man, like I'm gonna steal that.
Yeah, we were talking about it before the show, how like, even having to teach people lately instead of doing as much training as I'd like to, I'm seeing things from a new perspective. Mm-hmm. So when you see content from other content creators, you often like, oh dang, I like that they're doing this. Like I just saw a guy who does like these instructionals where he's got the live roll going and then he's in the bottom corner also talking into a microphone and like breaking down the individual details. And I'm like, this is a cool way to do it. Instead of just like, hey guys, welcome back. Today we're doing another Technique Tuesday and I'm going to fucking throw this guy with no resistance. And
Brandon told me this, which has always stuck with me. He was like, if they don't like it, fuck them. Who cares? It's fine. Like, there are going to be people who do like it. One of the weirdest thing I've ever done grappling, speaking of this, in terms of watching, trying to glean things from.
Was that?
I was saying one of the weirdest thing I've done with in terms of trying to gain something from watching grappling. So not even talking about white belts, but I've always been about this, trying to find these unorthodox ways of looking at grappling. And so, man, I've spent hours it sounds super stupid and ridiculous, but Googling chimpanzees wrestling.
That's the shit. I heard John Danaher talking about how
really?
Panthers. Oh, have you heard John Danaher saying about Panthers?
Talk about Panthers.
No, so they have a similar thing. If they're trying to eat a chimpanzee, they do essentially a berimbolo underneath the chimpanzee because where their claws are cuts arteries in the legs,
my
and the chimpanzees no, and it's when you see cats do that, big jungle cats, essentially berimbolo, to cut open the arteries on the insides of legs and around stuff like that. I mean, and all these... and John Danaher was like, yeah, berimbolo like a panther. And I'm like, okay, only you made that sound cool and sexy. I don't like this anymore. If you jiu-jitsu guys keep freaking me out, I'm like, can you not?
They're big on metaphors and allegories.
Well, it's just because in striking, it's do mantis style. Yeah, but then it's don't do fucking
no
mantis.
Urgency.
Don't fucking do mantis style. Yeah,
But so even if you watch chimpanzees or monkeys or whatever, they're gonna have these just great instincts because they have to, because they would have died otherwise. It's been selected for, right? I mean, they have hips where they're supposed to be. If they get thrown, they're not turtling. They're gonna be on their back. I don't have any good takeaways yet from it, but I haven't given up yet.
It's fun to put on.
Would you put a gi on a chimpanzee for science?
How do you like your chances?
Let's take this up a notch.
Okay,
and let's get some government funding.
It's you versus the chimp from Nope, but he's got a gi on.
We have a doctor here. We have a legit doctor.
What belt is
it? Did you ever see Deadliest Warrior?
Someone give us money to get a chimpanzee in a gi and get Austin to compete. We have to revamp judo.
It's Deadliest Warrior. You remember in Deadliest Warrior, they had a random doctor who would just be like, yeah, a spear would fucking hurt.
Yeah, that's the best.
It's how would a person survive an axe wound? They don't. Yeah,
it would be very hard.
It's
thanks, doc.
Right after the aliens building the pyramids type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So, before we get out of here, what are your goals with jiu-jitsu? I know you said your main focus right now is pursuing this. Does this mean just reaching more people with your channel and making more content, or?
So I'm still kind of wandering, I think, in both life and this, and I don't really know exactly. I don't have a method. I get asked this a lot. What's your game plan with this? What are you up to? I don't really have a sort of.
Are you putting together a catalog of stuff that you can do as an updated you're an online catalog you can always update and revamp? Is that what you're going into, or OnlyFans but buttholes?
Exactly.
Is that what you're trying to get into?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I couldn't have said it better myself. I was about to make that exact same point actually. No.
Man, you guys want to see some no-gi judo? Check out my OnlyFans.
Zero.
Back old school Athens style. No, I think.
We're making judo great again today, boys.
I think I used to think that sort of happiness and life was a function of both I guess freedom of time and resources, and in terms of if you had unlimited money and you had unlimited time, that that sort of translates to a high likelihood of being happy. And as I get older, I sort of realize that I think that's actually, well, it's definitely not true. I mean, just look at all the rich celebrities and stuff like not happy, but I think happiness kind of comes from, like, it's a byproduct of fulfillment. Like, it's
getting money from what you enjoy.
Life events like getting married and becoming a father often change your perspective on these things.
It's hard to chase happiness. Like, it's hard to, because I mean, everybody, like, it's hard for, if there was a simple solution, people wouldn't be depressed, anxious, right? But you can sort of chase fulfillment more easily, and happiness can come from fulfillment. And so I'm trying to just do what I find fulfillment in, which is doing what I love, grappling. And if there are other 15-year-olds like I was who want to learn grappling or online obsessing over it, like trying to leund cool
maybe
shit.
they'll find you.
Yeah. And then, so I don't exactly know what'll happen with it, but I'm just gonna keep trying to throw people and hopefully
hoping for the best.
Day, yeah.
Throwing people the best and hoping for the best.
All right.
So
You mentioned something about OnlyFans. Is that what the?
We can go into that at the end there. For the low price of $11.99 a month, you can see Austin grapple in a tunic. Fucking.
And you don't even want to know what you get for $20.99. So.
Yeah, you get the live-in wrestling partner there. Yeah, you don't want to see Austin get down with this grappling dummy over here on the private mat, on the small mat. Yeah. But yeah, man, have you gotten that first kid who's messaged you and been like, I signed up for judo today because
almost immediately. I get like so many in it, and
cool.
I wish I could. I was better before about answering all of them. I get so many, at least one a day. Some days I'll get like multiple. Someone that said, "Hey, I started judo because which is so cool." I'll get like pictures of their promotions, training on the like doing the things that I showed on my channel. The coolest comment that I got was last week ago, or 2 weeks ago, which is my favorite so far, where he said, "Thanks for making judo cool again."
Nice.
Yeah, which I thought was, oh man, that is kind of like a large part of what I'm trying to do.
That could be the first Bad Boy Medicine t-shirt.
Yeah.
Making judo cool again.
Yeah. Someone asked about the t-shirts at one time, comments, but I'm not ready for that yet. I don't feel deserving quite yet, but that's like the best part, is even if I'm having like a shitty day and feeling like doubting this, like what am I doing?
From all over the country and maybe even the world, I assume.
Like all different countries, broken English, like I don't know. 25% of the time I have to paste it into Google Translate. Sometimes I have to play around with it because I don't even know what language it is. But that's been super, super cool.
That's so sick, man.
Yeah,
that's
awesome. This is a TikToker and you can't speak English. That's all this is.
I think most people know you, especially most people that are watching this, probably know you because of your Instagram. Are there any other platforms that you post stuff on? Or
no,
right now,
I wanna get. That's another goal I have, to sort of eventually have like a more sort of established like YouTube channel or a website where I have all these things that I don't know. I'm not honestly so familiar with Instagram. I don't know if you can like pause and the reels at specific times. I haven't been able to figure out how to do it in other people's, and I've tried. So yeah. I want to have a better
way to navigate them. Yeah, that is nice that when they're under a minute, I don't think you can.
Yeah, that's annoying.
You can't. You have to just start the whole thing over, or just wait for it to come around again. But yeah. I think when they're over a minute, they have the little player at the bottom where you can drag it. But all the best stuff in the algorithm, or the stuff that gets the most success, is less than a minute.
Yeah, so, right. Exactly. So I don't have just Instagram right now. Yeah. Sometimes I always like, if I'm with people who don't have a good sense of humor or whatever, and they ask me what my channel is, I say like Bad Boy Medicine, like it's supposed to be funny and silly, like it's silly, but they're like, oh, Bad Boy Medicine, like blah blah blah. But
you're naughty, huh?
Yeah,
I think when you hear that name and then you meet, I think when you meet Austin, you're like, it is supposed to be silly, right?
It's like, this is my next project.
It was like I was joking.
Heroin junkie jujitsu.
Yeah,
exactly. Not what you think. Like, it's a very vegan, all natural.
It's like meant to be like, it's like this like the dumbest name. It's silly, but like that's the only place I am right now. Bad Boy Medicine.
Do you have any shout outs or anything for the people who train here with you or anything like that?
I mean, Brandon, the coach here, has been like just probably the most supportive.
One of my favorite people in the grappling community, and someone who
Yeah.
I don't think gets their flowers from other
Oh,
gyms. But
he's, I mean, there's a reason that like I've like essentially moved in here into the back, and it's because of him. I mean, Boomer as well has been like super supportive. Detroit stud of a grappler and really helpful. And I mean, all my training partners like the Garner brothers, Eli and Duke, Xavier, Nigel. Like, there's just been
Eli's training too.
yeah.
Whoa.
Go watch out for him. And
Really?
yeah, exactly.
Oh shit!
And
That's wild. I forgot it. Like, no offense, Eli, I forgot you existed.
Oh man,
I've only
he's-
really met like
he-
Duke and
yeah.
Brandon, and like
He's-
that's
he's
it.
known
Eli
as-
was too young, right? When you
No,
were
actually,
hanging
yeah,
out?
dude. Eli was a fucking probably a little kid when I first met him.
Right.
Now,
yeah.
now he goes by.
And even like Duke, I remember when Duke was young. Like now he's a man with a
he
kid.
goes by
Like,
the most handsome Garner brother is what he tells everybody. Yeah.
that must drive him.
There's two achievements.
kidding.
They're all so
the tallest Garner brother.
Everyone
and
else-
they're
everyone else
They're
says it.
so competitive, such a competitive gene pool. He's like, nah, I'm the most handsome. He has to run with it
And
now.
then also Alex too, like he's working back there. Judo guy who I've known actually for the last 15 years.
Yeah, he's the guy that you post a lot of the videos with.
Yeah,
of
the
you
official
and-
EK of Bad Boy Medicine. I mean, there's some other people I'm sure I'm forgetting, but those are the ones that immediately come to mind.
Yeah, shout outs to Boomer for hooking us up with our new gloves for our gym, bubble gloves. They turned out really fucking nice.
Super stoked.
Very,
People
very,
hit
very
each other
nice.
with those.
So we're excited about those. All right.
Well, guys, thank you so much for having me too.
Oh, of
I
course,
mean,
man. It's something we've been
it was
talking
an honor.
about for, like,
makes
2
me feel
months.
important. You know, like getting. You even gave myself a fresh haircut today. I was like, gotta look good.
Dude,
so
we were on
I
the way over
appreciate
here, and
it.
Trevor was like, "What do you know about Austin?" And I was like, "Not much, but we're gonna find out."
Better than not.
But I
good.
think that's a you know, a lot of people, especially around here, you know, they're interested in finding out a little bit more about you. So I'm hoping that you know they get
that's
to
cool.
do that. Oh, I actually have one more question that I forgot to ask earlier, and I told you I don't think about the questions, but as soon as you were talking about international, I started thinking about this. You've competed with guys from all over the world, I assume.
Mm-hmm.
What are the toughest goes you've had? Like the toughest opponents you've had on average? Like
I think there's like stylistic matchups, and I mean the best country is Japan. I would be less nervous just because it's like a kind of a predictable style. I mean, certain countries I just saw and I was like, oh Jesus Christ, like this is gonna be like this is not the country.
there's
that-
certain little flags you see beside the name, and
Brazil.
you're just like, fuck.
Like I always really struggled against Brazilians. They always felt so strong at the.
Pick the wrong hobby to get into now.
Yeah, I know, right? Exactly.
You picked the wrong fucking
And then,
sport to
and
get
then
into.
the ones I've been most impressed with are all the Eastern European style.
Yeah.
Uzbekistan's my favorite.
We were talking about Gokor, Chavician.
Exactly.
And, you know,
The highest stand. Yeah.
Ben Rothrock has gone over there and competed with those guys
Oh,
from
nice,
Belarus
yeah.
and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah,
and
all
they just
those
seem
countries.
like they are.
They're the most like all the Dagestani boys.
They just seem
you would see.
hard. They just seem like a hard
Oh
people,
yeah.
you know.
They're the most complete grapplers. It's that whole region.
Well, they're focused on competition over tradition.
Yeah, but, like
And that's
because
one
that's
thing I like
their-
about like their
yeah.
method. Like even it's like
It's
it's
battle
like yeah,
tested.
okay.
Well, it's like what
but
Austin said
fucking
about
get
the
good.
belting system. Like,
Yeah.
you know, because they come from a
Exactly.
Sambo culture, everything else is also just only
I
based
know.
on your accolades.
Like I would be more scared to fight like just if it was a black belt and whatever versus random guy from Dagestan. Like don't not give me the Dagestani. You know what I mean? Like that's gonna be a nightmare.
even if he has the gi on.
Yeah, I don't.
I'll take
There's
the
a million of
chip.
them.
I'll take the chip and the gi. I'll take the chip and the gi.
Georgia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, like Russia, all those like Armenia, like all that whole region is just full of killers. Like that's what I like to watch the most too.
Well, guys, we're here at Triangle Jiu-Jitsu. If you're in the area and you want to train
yeah,
with
come on
Austin,
by.
please come on by. And,
Are you available for foot sweep seminars? Is that a thing to go?
Or privates, I assume?
yeah,
Yeah,
no.
or
So
privates.
I've never like charged for anything judo related before. And
Fucking traditionalist. What's wrong with
I don't
you?
know. Like I may change that one day, but for now, I like that. It's just a very pure kind of thing for me, and like so yeah, I had a free foot sweep seminar that. You weren't there, but Dylan came, right?
That was
yeah.
really fun.
Yeah, I want to do more of those. And my next one, I want to do a body lock one.
Yeah, that's the most popular thing right now in jiu-jitsu.
Really?
In
I think-
in the high-level jiu-jitsu world, I think that people are obsessed with the body lock.
I think it's the best that you can apply in all sports, all grappling sports. Body locks, I've come to realize, is the best.
Well, that's
Well, I
what
mean, you saw what Islam did
Yeah.
to Oliveira. It body locked, and Oliveira's like, well, what the fuck do I do now?
Exactly,
And like I tell people, I'm like, oh, you can't grapple? Well, then learn how to grab a body. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, it's the biggest part.
Yeah, exactly.
So grab that.
Yeah,
You're okay.
It's the most obvious thing.
Yeah, it's like it's hard. It's easy to miss an arm. Grab the body. I'm like, all of a sudden,
Exactly.
And when you teach people wrestling,
it gets everything very easy. Like even if you are not an accomplished grappler, and you are an accomplished grappler, if you're the accomplished grappler and you get grabbed in a body lock, motherfucker, you have to defend because it's still such a dominant thing. I mean, yeah, you get like a foot and go back, but it's like such a fuck me kind of position.
Like that, like wrestlers, like if I have to take them down and I need to choose something, like it's the body lock. Like it's such a good throw.
It's a way to chill people out too.
Yeah.
I think that's like
it's versatile too.
Going back to the opposite side of the coin with judo, there is a lot of like downtime in jiu-jitsu in comparison, but a lot of that downtime is usually spent like sapping. You know, you're literally like draining someone, especially like a good wrestler.
Yeah.
If you can put them on their back, you have to like cook them to make it worth it. You know, because if you don't, they could just get back up and try to take you down again. So you really just need to like chill them out.
And even though I'm like super familiar with like that sort of like positioning, if I get caught in a body lock, I'm like, I feel somebody's hips in, like the terror I feel is like, oh, I gotta remember this because I want to make people feel like that.
Well, obviously, I mean, when you did your foot space seminar, there were so many people here that the blue mat couldn't even hold them. There had to be like 3 people.
You should be charging $10.
That's what I said. And dude, this man made programs for the seminar with the technique. I showed this to Trevor, and I was like, dude, have you ever seen this for any seminar
and I was
ever?
like, no, it looks like a doctor.
This is a guy you've probably been to like 300 striking seminars in your life, and you've never seen anybody
like
make
you don't get any of that.
You've never seen nobody make a program before.
I was like also self-conscious. Like, my wife was like, "You're doing what? Like that's weird."
It's good to know your wife's a little realist compared to
constant.
Well, I mean, dude, it's one of those things that like you get it and you don't realize how much you missed it at other seminars, but until you have it, because you know there's always people that record, and I definitely like to be a person who has a record and record, but I also want to be able to like focus solely on learning the technique while I'm there and getting as many reps as I can while I'm there.
Yeah.
And having something to take home with you, you're like, oh shit, that's like really useful. I mean, I taught the last 2 throws, the no-gi throws, I taught them in 2 classes the week after.
Oh, nice.
And I had that thing to go back to and be like, this is where I need to put my fucking foot. This is like, you know.
And with the pamphlet, like I took all the stills from live examples because I didn't want to be like that guy that like, this is how you do it. Because if I attended a seminar and I couldn't do it, I would be like, well, can you actually do this? Does this actually work? So I wanted to make sure that...
Same modality you have with your clips.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it needs to be...
The
proof needs to be in the pudding.
It helped me to figure out, like, well, how do I do this? Like, one of them that, like a Kuriashi, the circular one, it was kind of hard for me to figure out. Like, I struggled in the past teaching it, but it was one of those I could hit live. And so watching myself and being forced to teach it has improved my own ability to do it.
Yeah, my student Josh is obsessed with that.
Oh, it's the cool.
He loves. I think he calls it like putting people in the washing machine.
Oh,
circle. It's like they're being like drug in a circle.
It always reminds me of like slipping on ice is how it feels.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it too. All right, guys. So that is it for us today here on 10-8 Fightcast. Thank you, Austin.
Yeah.
Really appreciate you being on the show and inviting us here to Triangle Jiu-Jitsu. Once again, if you're in Durham, especially out here in the middle of nowhere, Durham, come train here at Triangle Jiu-Jitsu. It's one of the most, as far as legacy schools go in the area, there's not a place you can train that has like as much of an impact on the local scene as this place.
And like just full of just absolute killers. Like
if you ever watch the Toro Cup, you'll notice that about half the people on here are from this gym, and I think that's because they all feel like a shared responsibility to represent the gym. And for me, especially people like Coco and people like Audrey, when they go out to Toro Cup, it seems like they fight super hard to like prove themselves on this like, you know, home field advantage type of mat. So definitely a really good school with some really good reps and coaches. Until next time, guys, until we see you next week, we're talking about UFC again. Enjoy yourselves and the fights.
See you guys.